Good morning and welcome to dinCloud's webinar, the dinSQL Opportunity. Today we'll cover the opportunity for recurring revenue surrounding hosted SQL Server deals. To cover that topic, today we have joining us Sarah Barella, Microsoft SQL Server Technical Specialist, as well as our very own Mark Gerke, our Cloud Solutions Specialist. We're going to get right into our main presentation in just a few moments, but first I have a few housekeeping items. We have an opportunity for you to kickstart conversation with your customers and prospects about dinSQL on an upcoming webinar. You can invite them to join us October 28, 2015 at 11 Pacific, or they can catch it on demand at dincloud.com/webinars. If you are watching this on demand and want more info on dinSQL, please do not hesitate to contact us via our contact form. I've included the link here. We also have a number of hosted SQL resources available on our website, so be sure to check that out. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand the reins over to our first speaker today. Sarah Barella joins us from Microsoft. She is their SQL Server Technical Specialist. So with that, Sarah, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah from Microsoft. And today my goal is to share with you why I love SQL Server and to help you understand the opportunities that SQL Server brings to you and your customers. To get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about some facts about SQL Server in the marketplace. 60% of all customers that are Microsoft customers say SQL Server is their most used database platform. In the last 3 years, we've seen 900 businesses migrate from Oracle to SQL Server. So SQL Server is, what we're seeing is very integral to the to businesses and to their business needs. If you think about it, what is a business and what are their most important assets? In today's world, the most important asset of a business is its data. And where does that data live? In databases. So it is essential to customers and to businesses, and making sure that data is protected and secure is something everyone you talk to should relate to. When we talk about customers in the cloud, database platforms are one of the top workload that people think about moving to the cloud. And why is that? Because they're looking for some help to make sure that their databases are secure, that the data centers are secure, that they can have some help backing up those databases, and all of that is sort of being able to provide a service to a customer. One of the really great things that we've learned is that 43% of customers are paying for high availability. Whether it's always on availability groups or SQL Server clustering, there is a demand for those services. And what's really great about those services is that when you have a SQL Server that requires high availability, that means that people are buying more servers. And so that is generally a bigger sales opportunity where a customer will then not just buy one SQL Server, but 2 SQL Servers, and then they have all of those applications that go along with that. So when you hear a SQL Server opportunity, it is a good clue that this is going to be a larger opportunity in general. SQL Server is Microsoft's leading product by revenue. So when you think about why Microsoft is interested in SQL Server, it's because it makes us a lot of money, and it also can make you a lot of money as well. So let's go and take a look at a couple of things that are going on in the SQL Server world. Some of you might be aware that SQL Server 2005 is reaching its end of life for support, and that happens on May 12, 2016. And this is a great opportunity to get new customers. There are many customers out there that are running on SQL Server 2005 simply because they don't know how to upgrade. They don't know how to move from where they are. Maybe that database is living underneath somebody's desk or in a closet somewhere, and things are working just fine, and now things are running out of life, and they know they need to make a move. And if you can identify those customers that are still using SQL 2005, it's a great opportunity to introduce them to dinCloud and why they what you can do for them. What does this mean? There are going to be no more security updates for SQL Server 2005. So if a security vulnerability comes out, there won't be a patch. Also, that gets into compliance concerns. One of the biggest drivers in terms of compliance is making sure that your databases are secure. If there's no patches, then that automatically is going to be a problem. If they take credit card data or healthcare and HIPAA, all of those databases need to be upgraded. And it also comes to higher maintenance costs, because if you are still running a SQL Server 2005 database and it breaks down, you're going to have to pay somebody a lot of money to come in and help you with it, because Microsoft will no longer support that. So those are really great opportunities when you are talking to customers. If you hear they have 2005, migrating up to SQL Server 2012 or 2014 is a really great opportunity. One thing that a lot of people are frightened by is, oh, I haven't tested my application, or my application, the company that made it is no longer in business. What we have found is that there are tools available from Microsoft to help that upgrade process, and the vast majority of SQL 2005 databases can be upgraded with no application changes. You just upgrade the database and things still work. Now you're going to have to test it, but it's not as scary process as everyone. Maybe your customers are still out there on 2005 fear. So when talking about SQL Server, it's also good to kind of understand the SQL Server Lifecycle. And SQL Server is been released for the last decade on a 2-year cycle. That means every 2 years we get a new version of SQL Server. And as the SQL Server teams are, the team that writes SQL Server is merging with the SQL Azure team, what that means for us is that SQL Server is going to come out even faster than it had in the past, because customers are demanding new features. And there used to be a fear that, like, oh, I can't upgrade my SQL Server until Service Pack 1 comes out. Well, now Service Pack 1 might come out after the next full version of SQL Server. So what happens when the SQL Server in the box SQL Server 2012 or 2014 or 2016 comes out means that it's been tested already for months and months in production in Azure. So we shouldn't see all of the, that need for the service packs won't be as great. And that's something to get your customers adjusted to, because it is a hard adjustment, especially those that have been using SQL Server for a long time. SQL 2014 was released on April 1st of 2014, and it's been out for a while, and we've had a lot of success with it. One of the biggest drivers to SQL 2014 is its new in-memory capabilities. What that means is, databases in general, write data to disk, and disk is a physical thing, and that when data is written to disk, it's actually, physically written to that disk. While that process takes, truthfully, microseconds to occur, it still takes time. And when we see databases with, hundreds of thousands of transactions a second, we can have bottlenecks, no matter how fast that disk is. But at the same time that we're disk-bound, memory prices have fallen. And so in order to kind of ease the bottlenecks that we have in disk, database technologies are taking advantage of this new lower priced RAM and being able to put new data structures into memory. What this means for your customers is, if you are talking to a customer and they say, my database is so slow, and they're having performance problems, or SQL Server just can't keep up with my database, recommend that they take a look at the SQL Server in-memory features. We have seen in some cases up to 100 times improvement in performance. I personally worked on something recently where we had a 46 fold improvement in performance by just turning on the in-memory function features. Now, it's of course not automatic, but it is a functionality that you don't have to rewrite code. You do have to make a few changes, but truthfully, when you see the kind of performance benefits that come from in-memory, it really outweighs the investment in kind of altering your database. So that is by far the biggest new feature in SQL Server 14, and that's where we're seeing a lot of excitement. Also, there have been some improvements around the always-on HADR, and now we can have 8 replicas of your data living all over the world. There's been some improvement in the networking, how that data is transmitted to each other, and so now it's really fast, and you can also have a lot more insight into what is happening on those replicas. As SQL Server has grown, Microsoft has also invested a lot in BI and business intelligence. The idea is that Microsoft is trying to make business intelligence be less scary. In the past, you've needed to hire maybe a data scientist, you have big data warehouse, and some of our new tools like the self-service BI and Power View or Power BI allows an end user to interact with data without having to have all of this knowledge. If you know Excel, you can start using the new BI features in SQL Server 2014. So those are the real highlights of SQL Server 2014. And like I said, one of the big key indicators, if you're talking to somebody and they say, oh, my database is slow, be like, have you thought about SQL Server 14? So now I also wanted to briefly mention the different editions we have in SQL Server. We have 4 editions of SQL Server. The web edition is for websites, and it's for only public websites. So what that means is if the website has like a login or has any security features in it, this is not for web edition. Web edition is really just for like blogs, anything that a person can go to, maybe collect information from web forms, and it has a very limited use case, and it is limited to 4 cores, and it has the basic sort of database engine functionality. It's a great introductory database. But then if you have much larger like application-based or really robust web apps, that's when you really look at the workhorse of SQL Server, which is SQL Server Standard. That is limited to 16 cores. We can do HADR there with limited database mirroring, 2-node database mirroring, and 2-node clustering. Business intelligence is something that is available, but we don't see a lot of it in a hosted environment because truthfully it has 2 components. It has the core-based modeling and then a SAL-based license as well. And what happens in a hosted environment is often you have a lot of people connecting to those databases, and really quickly it's just more cost-effective to use Enterprise Edition. Enterprise Edition is for those customers that have a lot of data, and that data needs to be protected. So things like database mirroring, always-on availability groups that allow you to have HADR with 0 downtime, database partitioning, which allows you to structure your data on disk and in the most optimal ways. Really, Enterprise Edition is for when you're talking to customers who have those, they say, I can absolutely have 0 downtime, and my data is, or I'm having very large performance problems. The in-memory functionality I was talking about earlier, an enterprise-only feature. So we want to kind of get into a discussion of who do we see as, who buys SQL Server? And we see that really there's 3 groups of people. They're IT professionals, people who run the database administrators, network administrators. They generally know about HADR. They know how the databases are configured. These are really great people to interact with because they can speak your language. We also deal with business owners or executives. A lot of times what we're seeing more is marketing executives will be going to cloud providers and say, hey, I want to save on the cost of of our IT, but unfortunately they don't always know, like, how many servers do you need and what kind of servers do you need. And they're great because they can make decisions, but then you also need to be able to interact with an IT professional generally to kind of understand their needs. And finally, application developers. These are people who actually write code. They oftentimes aren't sysadmins or DBAs, and they really have a hard time figuring out, what might be needed in the future. But they are really good because they will tell you exactly what their application does. So this is who we generally see coming in and talking to us about SQL Server. Now, when we're talking to these prospective customers, we have a prospective interview that we've seen that works really well with cloud providers. And oftentimes we begin these conversations with just asking, tell me about your database. If you just sit back and you listen, ask general sorts of questions about their database, who uses it, does everyone in your company use it? Is your company 24/7 or is it only being used 8 to 5? And these are a lot of keys that you can use to help determine, does this person need HADR? Is this a mission critical application? And I have a couple of slides next where we can drill down a little bit into some of the questions that we ask. In terms of opening the conversation, did you build this, or is it a store, or is it a ready bought application? Oftentimes the ready bought applications will be given with some guidance from the vendor. I tend to believe that the vendors usually overestimate the needs, but it's always the great place to start with, okay, so tell me about your application and tell me what the vendor is asking for. If that database is used all day long, 24/7, that tells you that they probably can't afford any downtime. And if they need to do maintenance, hey, that might mean that they need to use Enterprise Edition that allows online maintenance without any outages. If they tell you that every single person in their organization uses this application, that's a good indicator that high availability is needed. That if the application goes down, everyone in their business is impacted. When I talk about high availability, we're usually talking about what's happening in a given day. Like, you might have a blip or those sorts of things. When I talk about disaster recovery, that's what happens when you have a hurricane or a volcano or those sorts of things. And both are important, but it's important to understand what is the customer strategy for each of those. I also like to ask questions about how the application works. And do they use any maybe lesser known features in SQL Server? One of these common ones is, do they use Service Broker? You might not have ever heard of Service Broker, but that's a key indicator. Oh, they use Service Broker. Web Edition won't work for this. Or do you use reporting services? Those are additional services that also may require additional servers. And so they're good key questions to ask a potential customer to kind of begin to understand what their needs are. And I generally find people love to talk about their databases. So once you get started, they will start talking about them. So I also like to listen for their pains. People, love to, like I said, love to talk about their databases, especially when they are not performing well. They will talk about slow performance or maybe scale. And these are things that you could definitely help address. Are they outgrowing their current capabilities? Are they complaining that they run out of space on their database server? Those are problems you can easily solve by selling up a larger SQL Server. Generally, I like to think if they have a database that's 10 gigs, I generally recommend kind of 3 times that. Then you need at least 30 gigs of space. So that's kind of my general rule of thumb, is 3 times the amount of data. It gives them room to grow, and it gives them room for backups. Do you need lots of plugins? Do you use data intelligence? What are any third-party tools that are accessing these things? Often, increasing costs are a good sign that a lot of people still have their SQL servers on physical hardware. So your new customers, that you still might have that conversation is, I'm a little bit afraid of virtualizing my SQL Server. There should be no fears in virtualizing SQL servers. I believe that, I don't want to say every SQL server should be virtualized, but probably 99% of them can be virtualized today. SQL Server in a virtual environment is supported up to, I believe, 2 terabytes in SQL 14 of memory. You can have enormous databases, and the benefits of virtualizing it are huge, and you can also offer those customers a cost savings and also management savings as well. So those are, the listening for pain is a really good indicator of, hey, you're having a problem, let me help you solve that problem. It may mean moving to a new version of SQL Server or a bigger server. And in a lot of cases, sometimes it's just saying, hey, have you thought about, for instance, an HADR solution that will give you higher availability with less hassle. And that is all of the slides that I have for my portion of the slide, and I am now going to turn it over to Mark to kind of talk about what dinCloud specifically can offer.
Thank you, Sarah. For a great presentation, very informative. My name is Mark Gerke. I'm a Cloud Solution Specialist with dinCloud. Just going to go over a little bit about how we kind of working with Microsoft and SQL and leveraging, the cloud readiness of, SQL and adding value to our customers. I particularly like some of the stats that you threw out there, Sarah. That SQL is one of your top workflows in the cloud, and that, a lot of customers, the business executives, the line of business owners are, looking to, to move to the cloud. We're seeing that as well. So again, welcome everyone. Appreciate your time. Just going to go through a couple slides here. So first of all, just going to give you a little overview of dinCloud. So we're a cloud services provider. We launched in January of 2011. We were actually Microsoft's Cloud Partner of the Year in 2013. The only one nominated in North America, so we're very proud of that. Some ways that we differentiate ourselves from other cloud providers is, with the migration process. We have a project management and an implementation team, very mature processes. Every customer, we work with their partner and the customers and the end users to make it a seamless and transparent migration. We've got a lot of options as far as migrating the data on disk, doing it over the wire, etc. So it's one of the ways we differentiate ourselves. Another way is we're a full-service cloud provider. We can provide all the services that an organization needs to run their business in the cloud. From hosted virtual desktops, we actually have the #1 rated, desktop as a service in the industry. We offer hosted virtual servers. Today's conversation is around hosted SQL. And we also offer cloud storage for folks that want to keep their systems and data where it's at and then leverage the cloud, for off-site backup and recovery. Some of the unique things that we do is we give every customer their own dedicated virtual private data center. We do that by isolating each customer's environment. Everybody gets their own dedicated virtual appliances. So there's no restrictions around routing, networking, etc. Everything is in a high availability clustered design. So if a customer subscribes to one VM that's going to be running on a physical host, we're going to have another physical host for redundancy, but they're only paying for the one VM. With a lot of other cloud providers, if you want 2 VMs, you've got to pay for 2 VMs. Everything is very easily managed through our dinManage portal, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So again, thanks again, everyone. As far as the, the next thing I want to touch on is the security. Most folks, we have 95% of our customers are in compliance-regulated industries. So compliance and security is, paramount. We take extremely security. We do some things unique that other folks don't do to allow our customers to maintain that compliance. First of all, we host out of Tier 3 plus Tier 4 data centers with Equinix. These are world-class facilities. They're military grade. There's guards at the entrances. There's guards walking the floors. There's dual man traps to get into the data center. Each cage had its own individual biometric locks. Each rack had its own locks. We're recording everything in our private cages. the facilities recording and logging everything, so very, very physically secure. And then we add a number of layers to allow our customers to maintain security. We've got perimeter security, which is an IP reputation filtering service from ThreatStop. We're monitoring the network for malware, botnets, anomalies. We give each customer their own dedicated, isolated virtual appliance, or vRouter, to provide the routing, the networking, the firewall, the IPsec VPN tunnel. We're providing the AAA, the authentication, the authorization, the access controls, and the auditing, typically by leveraging Active Directory on our end. With our desktop as a service solution, we include two-factor authentication, and with our admin portal, two-factor authentication is required as well. From a security perspective, we have the ability, kind of unique, to encrypt in transit, which almost everybody does, but we also encrypt at rest. Not many folks encrypt at rest. We include that. And then from the AV malware content protection perspective, smaller customers are typically including the free stuff from Microsoft and some other folks. We can offer Trend as an option, and the larger customers are typically bringing what they're using today. Or our managed service provider partners are leveraging the tool set that they're familiar with and what they're using. So there's no restrictions on any third-party tools you want to use. We're going to do vulnerability scans on our infrastructure. We can offer that as a service to our customers. And some of the unique differentiators with dinCloud, we're going to include it bandwidth. So all inbound data transfers, all outbound with dinCloud. We're also going to include 10 days worth of backups. So for the databases and any other service or servers or desktops or hosting lists, we're going to include 10 days worth of backups included with the service. As far as some of the use cases where we're seeing, SQL being leveraged in the cloud, as Sarah mentioned, it's cloud ready. Particularly where we're seeing application dev and testing. Those folks need scalability. They want to be able to scale up. They want to be able to scale down. They want to be able to spin up resources quickly. The cloud allows them to do that. So we're seeing, that's a good place where folks are starting. New production workloads, new applications. Instead of buying, hardware and doing things the traditional way, folks are looking to leverage the cloud for that. And also, folks that may have a retiring infrastructure, maybe looking at an infrastructure upgrade, or want to move from, an earlier version of SQL, 2005, what have you, 2014. That's another time when they start looking at the cloud, when they're looking at upgrades. And then as far as spare capacity, as Sarah alluded to as well, they're running out of capacity on site. They want to have some overflow in the cloud. We're a great fit for that, as well as high availability. Folks that these mission-critical applications and databases that they don't ever want to go down. It makes sense to replicate them to another data center, leverage the cloud for that as opposed to building that yourself. So we're seeing a lot there as well as business continuity, disaster recovery. Those remote availability groups. Having a passive active design or an active design for business continuity, disaster recovery. So we're seeing a lot of use cases there. And as far as dinCloud is concerned, we give our customers and their partners full automation. As far as our partners, we'll give you a white labeled portal. You'll be able to put your logo on there. You'll look like a $30 million cloud player day one. Give you full automation to provision everything from our portal for your customers. You can also give your customers self-service capabilities so they can auto-provision their own services. I'll just kind of show you some screenshots what that looks like. So here's an example of what the dashboard looks like. From here you can manage your existing environment. You can remotely manage things. You can spin up new resources on the fly. You can change the resource of existing resources on the fly, etc. Just some screenshots of what it looks like. This is what the ordering screen looks like. Very easy automated ordering process. Here's what it would look like to spin up a Windows server with SQL. We've automated the entire process. You just basically choose what data center you want, what resources you want, and then you can easily select which version of SQL Server you want and the quantity. Hit add to cart, check out. Once you check out, that server will be available for you to manage in your portal. I'm going to show you that screen in a moment. One of the other unique differentiators with our DIN Managed Portal is the ability to provision that virtual private data center end-to-end without any user intervention. We've integrated into our the appliances that we use, where you can set up the networking, the routing, the subnetting. You can create those firewall rules and the VPN tunnel right from within our portal. We show our partners how to do that usually on the first call. We've got some unique capabilities with Active Directory integration, as I mentioned, for the user authentication or authorization. We're standing up an Active Directory server on our end to kind of automate the provisioning process. We've got some wizards for that. And then as far as remote management, so if you're ever outside the office, you want to get to your customer's environment or your environment remotely, securely, all you need is a web browser and internet connection. You can very easily remotely manage your environment. You can get a snapshot of what your inventory looks like, and then you can take some remote actions. You can remote console or remote VNC to your servers or desktops for that matter, upgrade, downgrade resources on the fly. So a lot of functionality available. With our DIN Manage portal, what I thought I would do is just kind of share, one case study. This is actually published on Microsoft's website. So we had a customer, National Asset Direct, was looking to improve productivity and lower costs by moving their applications, including SQL databases, and this particular customer also added desktops. So by doing that, since we were managing the underlying infrastructure, everything was centralized on high-speed infrastructure. We secured it. We backed up. They've seen an operating cost reduction around 50%. Then we have also improved productivity by giving them mobility with our desktop as a service. Microsoft was so impressed, they contacted the customer, vetted it out, and actually published this case study on their website. So again, just kind of sum things up. Why would you want to choose dinCloud or partner with dinCloud for your SQL hosting? Well, number one, high-performance computing platform. We've actually built our platform for high-performance VDI. And to do that, you need very dense compute, you need very fast networking. In our case, 40, 100 gigabit speeds, which you just don't see with other providers. Very fast storage. We can offer SSD options for those demanding databases where we're seeing 470,000 IOPS on reads. I'd already covered how we include a high availability design, but you're only paying for each VM. No transfer fees ever in or out. 10 days worth of backups are included. Went through the security layers, a lot of security that we include. You can partners, customers can bring whatever third-party security solutions they want. And then the automation with the cloud, be able to spin up resources when you need them, spin them down when you don't, etc. That's what the cloud gives you, the automation with our DIN Manage portal. The whole, capital expense versus an operating expense. No upfront expense. It's all pay-as-you-go model. And then for customers that, need some help around design, upgrades, migrations, want someone to take over the full-time monitoring, management, and administration, we do that through our partner community. So if our partners don't have that level of expertise, we can bring that level of expertise in. Then you just want to thank everyone for their time. Here's a snapshot of some of the context, and again, thanks everyone for their time.